From the Blind Ability Studios, it's Wellness Wednesday with your hosts, Beth Gustin and Robin Ennis.
If it's not a goal that you want for yourself, you're not going to reach it because it's not your goal.
Well, who am I? What is my self-concept? What are my values? How do I view myself? What do I want? When you start to answer those questions, then you start to really develop goals that fit with who you are and goals that you really want to accomplish versus other people.
Reminding yourself why you want to reach this goal. So don't forget the purpose or intent behind you doing what it is that you're doing. Welcome back to Wellness Wednesday. My name is Beth Gustin, licensed professional counselor here in Colorado, with my co-host Robin Ennis, licensed clinical social worker, also here in Colorado. And we are officially recording the first podcast episode of 2024. I don't know where the time has gone, but this new year is in full swing, and we thought we would discuss those New Year's resolutions that many of you might have set and maybe haven't been able to achieve yet here at the end of January, as most of us tend to stop making progress on those around this time of year.
Yeah, Beth, it was really weird hearing you say 2024. And I still, whenever I'm typing my notes, it's really eye-opening to do that. Time really does go by super fast. And I feel like the older I get, it just speeds by even more. But yes, Happy New Year, Beth, and Happy New Year to all of you. It's good to be back. Like Beth mentioned, this is the time where people are setting their goals or what they want for the year. And this is also the time where it can be a little more challenging, where people are revising the goals that they set on January the 1st or whenever. And sometimes some people may get frustrated or overwhelmed and kind of stop fulfilling those goals. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Or, in my case, I set themes for the year and then base goals off of that, which can be a little bit easier. So we'll talk about different techniques as well. How is your year going so far, Beth?
I'm laughing because I may or may have not accidentally scheduled somebody for January of 2023 when I meant to schedule them for 2024 because, it's a new year and we all forget to write the new date. So that happens. I caught it. So the person did get their appointment reminder on time.
Very good. I think I've done that too, Beth, myself, where I'm like, I'll schedule an appointment and then it'll go back to look at the date. And I'm like, well, where did it go?
Yep.
And then I put it the following. I'm like, oh, whoops.
There's no reminder being sent out. Yeah. So my New Year's going well. I am like you. I kind of set what I call overarching or big picture goals for the year, but I do not tend to make them very specific or short term, which I know goes against a lot of what I work with my clients on when it comes to goal setting. But for me, I find that bigger picture works better. And you all find what works better for you. But one of my big picture goals for me this year is to start some in-person grief and loss groups. I do break that down into some smaller tasks, if you will, to reach that goal, because there are certain pieces I have to have in place before I can start the group. That's just one example. And so my year in regards to that goal is starting off a little slower than I would have liked. My hope was to begin those in February. It's going to get pushed back to March, but that's okay. I'm still making progress. It's just not as robust as I thought I would, running out of the gate of 2024.
Well, I think that's an awesome goal. In December, we talked about grief and loss and how they react differently. So the fact that you're creating a group where I love group environments because people get to hear other people's perspectives and they have that aha moment, that light bulb moment where they realize that they're not alone. So I'm glad that you have that goal. It's very much a need for people out there. And I also too know that it's a passion of yours. So that's really awesome.
I think the biggest thing is, how do we achieve these goals? I know you yourself are working on some very big goals as well for 2024.
I am. I feel that whenever you're going back to setting the goals is, how do you know what you want to accomplish? Not necessarily really being mindful of not creating goals because you feel like you have to. There's a few clients on my caseload where they feel like, well, but I have to live up to my parents' expectations. I have to do this. They expect me to get a job. But more so honing into, well, who am I? What is my self-concept? What are my values? How do I view myself? What do I want? Because when you start to answer those questions, then you start to really develop goals that fit with who you are and goals that you really want to to accomplish versus other people. And I feel like that's what gets people moving forward, is doing what they want to do. And I feel like that could really make the longevity of your goal setting last a lot longer if you start with that. So have you found that to be true, that, in your practice, that people, when they set goals, that it tends to be more of other people versus themselves?
Absolutely. And I always tell my clients, if it's not a goal that you want for yourself, you're not going to reach it because it's not your goal. You won't have the passion and the drive for it. Whereas if it's a goal that you yourself set for yourself, your likelihood of achieving it is much higher because it's something that you're doing for you. And you can better break down the steps and the tasks to achieve it. And you're going to have more motivation behind that.
Yes, exactly. And so one way that going into achieving the goals is that one way that I help my clients is I love the identity wheel exercise. And I first learned about that when I was supervising social work interns, helping people get in tune with who they are. And I use it now in my therapy practice among clients. And so what the therapy wheel is if you think of a pie, a round circle, and then how the pie has different pieces, and some pieces are bigger than others. And so it's trying to think of, okay, well, what part of my identity comprises those 5 pieces? And again, some may consume more of your identity than others, but it's trying to figure out what are the different aspects of who you are and which areas do you feel like you want to develop more in, and which other areas do you feel like you're fine? Which other areas do you feel like can enhance your identity? So I feel like that's a good exercise. And along the way, you could even dive deeper. Okay, well, what part of my identity do I feel like causes me more disadvantage or marginalization compared to others? It's a really good exercise to create self-awareness.
I like that one a lot. And that one actually is new to me. I do something similar with roles, after a loss, looking at the different roles that we played before and after someone's experienced a loss. And so kind of looking at identity that way, but I like the way you've broken that down.
Yeah.
I also think one thing that I help my clients look at when discovering kind of who they are and what they want their goals to be is what are their values? Because oftentimes if we can align our goals with our values, or we can look at our values and figure out what we want to do to live in better alignment with our values, that helps us create our goals as well.
I agree. I really agree. You did mention about my particular goal. So going off of my theme that I said is the year of growth. That was actually my theme last year. And I think it's going to carry over until this year, is that I am going back to school. So my first week started last week, and it's an online program. I'm getting my doctorate in social work. And so I love learning. I feel like learning is a form of therapy for me. And so that's a goal to help me grow professionally. I like hearing other people's perspectives, but it also too comes along with, okay, I really have to prioritize, right? So going back to school, that's a goal of mine. But then also too, under that, there needs to be a lot of mini goals set so that I won't get overwhelmed like I almost did, right? So when people set goals and then when you start to get immersed in the goal and you're like, uh-oh, this seems a lot. This seems overwhelming. I mean, I've definitely had, as I've told Beth, I've definitely had moments of that so far in my program. But I think that moment has caused me to step back and say, okay, how can I break it down smaller so that it won't be so overwhelming? So for me, since I'm taking 3 classes, it's breaking those classes down. So one day I will focus on one class and what that assignment looked like. And then maybe a couple of days later, I'll focus on another class and what that assignment looked like, so that I won't think that I need to tackle everything at once and get overwhelmed and then not pursue my degree at all.
Congratulations, by the way, because that's a big endeavor and I'm excited for you. And I think along with prioritization, I think about time management. And is it making a schedule, for example? So, okay, I'm going to block out this time from like 8 to 12 or whatever it is on my calendar and work on this class, and then take a break for self-care, for example, or take a break to eat, because eating is also self-care. But prioritization and time management are the 2 things that when I work with clients on goal setting, we talk about. Okay, how are you going to structure this? What time do you have to devote to this? And how are you going to make sure that you make that time treat it almost like it's a job is what I recommend, because that way you're going to get it done. So you put it on the calendar, you've got the priorities, that's a big word today. You've got your priorities, and then you block out your time and you really protect that time so you get it done.
I agree. I was nodding my head, Beth. I agree with everything you said, right? For me, that makes me feel less anxious. Yeah, prioritizing in time, like having a certain time blocked off. And it also too holds me accountable, because then I know for sure, okay, I've got to show up. And you mentioned treating it like a job. I definitely say that with my clients when trying to accomplish goals. I say, well, treat it like you would treat our sessions, right? You show up to our sessions on time. So prioritizing it in that way where you're holding yourself accountable. But I also too need to hold myself accountable with self-care. That's something that I work on with my clients and the social workers that I supervise. So I need to hold myself to that same level of accountability. It's that self-care, because it's going to be very, very important.
We will do a whole entire episode on self-care in the near future, because it is that important, I think. And it is something that most of us neglect or don't make much time for, or tend to not think is important. And especially when we're working towards goals and really big goals, we need to incorporate self-care so we can keep moving and working towards those goals.
I agree. I'm glad you came up with that idea, Beth, because that's going to be such a great podcast for everyone. That's something that we all need to tune into ourselves. Again, like they say, I mentioned this in the past podcast, is that like they say on the airplane, you must put your mask on yourself before assisting others.
Right. So along with SMART goal, which is specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound or timely or time frame, how else do you find it helpful to achieve goals, Robin? What do you do?
I think it's going off of the self-concept is really believing in yourself, because you have to believe that you can achieve it. And so the I can. And I really love motivational quotes. And so at one period, and actually, now that I say that, I will probably incorporate this again to help motivate me. I would put in the calendar app on my phone one of a favorite quote, and it would pop up in the morning of every day to remind me. And I feel like that helps me keep motivated. And the purpose, reminds me of the reason that I'm accomplishing this goal. It's like the eye on the prize.
That's a really good point. And I like that a lot, to reminding yourself why you want to reach this goal. So don't forget the purpose or intent behind you doing what it is that you're doing.
Right. Yeah.
Because if we lose that, then we're going to lose sight of that goal. And it's okay if our goals shift and change over time. Mm-hmm. I've set out to create hopefully 2 different grief and loss groups, one for pet loss, one for human loss. Mm-hmm. Am I going to get both off the ground at the same time? Probably not. Might the needs of the group or the goals shift over the year? They might. And so being open to that flexibility of the goals I set for myself early in January may shift and change as life shifts and change, as group members do or do not come to a group. That's going to inform my next steps, but always keeping an eye on, in my case, I will be outing some in-person groups. And for Robin, it's, she is going back to school and she has 3 classes and she's balancing a lot of other responsibilities and priorities, and her priorities may need to shift and change depending on what comes up. And so maintaining that flexibility is also important, I think.
Yes, I would agree. I would wholeheartedly agree with that. Flexibility, that's the key word that stands out. And with goal setting, it shouldn't be an all or nothing, right? Because I think that's another reason why people get frustrated and give up, because if they feel like, oh, well, no, I'm not on track, I can't do it, and they just stop. But yes, you have to be flexible and willing to move things around if needed, because like as Beth said, life changes. Life can be unpredictable, circumstances change. So I'm glad that you brought that up.
Yeah, and I think the key is just believe in yourself, know who you are, know what you want, know why you're doing it.
Yes.
And go for it.
Yes, I agree. All right. So as always, if anybody has any questions or comments for Beth and I, please drop a line. You can do that through email, Facebook, or you can call us. We would definitely want to hear from you in regards to what you think, and also too if you have any ideas for future topics.
Yes, and as always, please take good care of yourselves and stay grounded.
Yes, until next time.
You can send Beth and Robin a message at 612-367-6093 or by email at info@blindabilities.com. They'd love to hear from you.
When we share
what we see through
each other's eyes, we can then begin to bridge the gap
between the limited expectations
and the reality
of blind abilities.
and the realities of blind abilities.